Welcome to the London School of Economics and in particular the Institute of Social Psychology. My name is Barry Rogers and I am a visiting senior fellow here at the school, and I teach a course on the master's program called Organisational Life. Now, over the next few weeks we're going to be posting internally and externally on iTunes U a number of the lectures from Organisational Life for this year, and we wanted to give you a sense of what it is will be included within those lectures. The first point of call for us in trying to get some sense of what it is we do within the program is usually the course outline. This is quite a chunky document, 18 pages in total, with a full reading list, description, background information and all of that as to what it is we're actually going to do. The front page of that has the mission concerning the program. If I look at that, it says PS446, which is the acronym that we use surrounding the course here at the LSE. PS446 seeks to provide an insightful perspective on emerging aspects of organisational life by A, grounding understanding of these processes from a theoretical point of view, and B, meaningfully connecting with organisational practice. Now, that's quite a mouthful. There's a lot of academic mumbo-jumbo there. So let me try and decode some of that and give you a real feel for what it is we'll touch within the program. In particular, this notion of the emerging aspects of organisational life. That itself is quite a loaded statement from an academic perspective. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. To do that, we've got to step back for a moment. The image that most of us have in our minds of an organisation, let's call it the traditional organisation, is a relatively recent construction from a historical perspective. It was nurtured and developed in the 20-25 years in the wake of World War II. Let's call this the high point of organisational modernity. Here, organisational man was deemed to be loyal and committed. The organisational setting was defined by a high degree of temporal and spatial standardisation. You knew where you went to work and when you went to work. And the organisation itself, the rational organisation, sought to control its environment and went out there in pursuit of shareholder and managerial interests. Okay? In effect, the organisational relationships and the set of relationships were relatively well defined and quite limited. In recent years, the external landscape surrounding organisations seems to have changed profoundly. On the one hand, risk and uncertainty has come to dominate that environment. Not to say that we haven't had risk and uncertainty previously, but the nature and the quality of that risk seems to have changed. Something to do with man-made risk, be it the impact of biotechnology or over-the-counter derivatives. That frames the world in which we operate in. Another framing element is information and communication technology. That has had a huge impact in terms of where we work and when we work. Also tied in is the notion of why we work. We talked previously under the traditional organisation of the relatively traditional psychological contract. Now this connection with the organisation seems to be a lot more fragile. Tie in with that who we work with, who we legitimately work with inside and outside the organisation, who actually constitutes a real stakeholder that has an impact in terms of our day-to-day activities, then we see that this whole environment is a very different world in which we have to work on a day-to-day basis. This has a huge impact for us as individuals, okay, in terms of identity, also team identity, organizational identity, in terms of behavior, but also in terms of power and control, and huge consequences for organization in terms of how they manage their day-to-day relationships with a much, much more diverse set of stakeholders. What we want to do in PS446 is to try and get a sense of how we make some sense of all of that. As I said right at the start, from a theoretical point of view, but also to connect with practice, to link up these two in a meaningful type of way and try and equip students with some form of theoretical toolbox that they can use for critical and reflective action out there in the world on a day-to-day basis. In terms of how we do this, we will meet up for the next 10 weeks as a class in this lecture hall for a 3-hour session. The first hour is a lecture, and as I said at the start, a selection of those lectures will be posted externally over the coming weeks. It would be good if you can join us. Any thoughts, views, or observations that you have, we will post my email after this sequence, and it would be nice to hear from you. Otherwise, hope you enjoy the session, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.